My guest is Arvind Narain, who is founder and CEO of MobileASaP. Arvind, welcome.
Thank you, Richard.
It's great to see you again. So tell us what MobileASP does.
Sure.
This is a huge space. We're talking about mobile security.
Basic premise of MobileASaP is the following. One, we think the world, or the mobile world, or the usage model is shifting from company-owned devices to bring your own devices. Number two, because we are now dealing with a landscape where there are hundreds of thousands of public apps out there, and it happens to be your personal device, there's a certain bill of rights or sense of expectation that you will indeed be allowed to use many or most of those apps, subject to what I call reasonableness. Reasonableness being defined as, IT controls for inappropriate content, things that may cause bandwidth hogging, productivity killers, et cetera, et cetera. Outside of that, you as a user would expect to use, your personal device pretty much the same way, unimpeded, as you would do whether you're offline or whether you're connected to the enterprise. Now, overlay that with the fact that you have enterprise apps as well. So what we have are BYOD devices or personal devices running public apps, some enterprise apps that have been provisioned, commingled, connected to the enterprise network.
The perfect storm.
There you go. There are solutions today for things like onboard, device security, data leakage controls, device management, where they do break fix, wipe a device, lock a device, unlock a device. Perfectly useful solutions for the yesterday and today problem. Mm-hmm. But as we look ahead to the seismic shift, if you will, with BYOD, essentially provides a platform which provides real-time threat prevention.
And what are the elements of that platform? Is there an agent?
Yes, let me three parts to what we do. One is the software bits that sit on the device, very simple, unintrusive, friendly, which allows the user to browse through their catalog of apps, content or enterprise content, a help desk where they can ask for additional apps, and finally, the most important one, as I told you, is around the policies for that particular user, kicked off at an enterprise level or down to the user level for public app controls, be it native apps that someone may have downloaded from the App Store, from off-Broadway app stores, or URL-based or cloud-based applications as well. Mm-hmm. And that's in essence what happens on the device. Part two is clearly the real-time inspection engine, which looks at the application traffic of the native application kind or the cloud-based, and essentially maps against the policy in place for what the user can and cannot do for both public and private apps, and blocks the user from doing what they are not allowed to do. Of course, the most important thing here is for that real-time engine to report back any violations or intrusions. Let's talk a little bit about violations. Violations may not be what I call in the classic sense of malware, intrusions. It could be something as benign as, bandwidth hogging apps that fit the risk characteristic defined by the enterprise in their signature database. The third part that is really the cloud-based platform. It can support multiple tenants, or it can be hosted as software within the enterprise, and it essentially allows the corporation to manage users, devices, other assets like applications, signatures, a signature repository, and the dashboard to look at the intrusions and violations.
So let's look at the endpoint, the agent. So
Sure.
it's basically whitelisting applications. You've got policies about what applications are acceptable.
Sure. Let me talk a little bit about that. There are actually, the way we do it is you can either do just on-device enforcement of policy. You can do it on the network or on the wire. It really goes beyond just blacklists and whitelists. It looks at who the user is, what the device is, looks at what the application is, whether it is URL-based, whether it is IP address-oriented, meaning HTTPS traffic. It looks at the access type, whether it's public Wi-Fi, GPRS, et cetera, and then uses that set of attributes or metadata to resolve access, go, no go. That's what we do. Interestingly, not every device OS allows you to do everything on the device. And this is a very critical point. When I talked earlier about why we do things on the wire versus just on the device, let me kind of lay this out for you. So we talked about Richard wanting to use his device offline, doing whatever you want to do. When you connect into the enterprise via the VPN, of course, IT controls kick in. If you only do on-device management and on-device policy enforcement, you cannot in any way turn it off when you go offline. It is either always on or always off. So it's good for the corporation, but this is the equivalent of Big Brother watching you even when you're offline. Yep. So that is really the reason why we said, hey, we cannot do everything right there. And there are also some privacy laws that kick in. In the EU, for example, when a user is offline, you're regulated from monitoring, if you will, the traffic flow from the device, which is why we moved that upstream and said you can do it on the wire.
So the component that sits on the corporate network.
That is correct. It sits behind the VPN terminator, and that's the the policy enforcement and policy enforcement engine.
Okay.
Correct.
And then you manage that from essentially a cloud platform.
That's correct.
Yeah.
The portal.
Yeah.
Right. We call the whole platform Max.
And so today, a lot of organizations I talk to are mostly concerned with mobile device management, which is, as you pointed out, is the ability to enroll and maybe encrypt, and then wipe after it's been lost. And that seems to be, they seem to view it in a very traditional asset management situation.
Absolutely.
But like you say, that doesn't address
No,
the
there's
usability.
no doubt about it.
Yeah.
In hockey parlance, that's where the puck was, and that's where the puck is today. But what the problem we are solving really is like saying that's where the puck is headed. Yes, device security is important. Indeed, we do it as well, because that is part of the closing the loop. If there are violations, if there is a trend, what do? We close the loop in looking at the violations and the intrusion reports and say, aha, let's go ahead and suspend the user or suspend the device, or for that matter, take the extreme measure of killing or wiping the device, locking the device. So in some ways, we are closing the loop between application security in real time and device management.
What sort of experiences have your customers had to date with deployments?
Let me share with you a couple of thoughts. One which was interesting for us, and I'll share this one here. There's a customer of ours who said, well, we like what you do, but guess what? We really like the application and the real-time and the cloud service security part of what you do. Can it work with our current MDM solution? And the answer is yes. I call this we are available a la carte. Two is the customer said, hey, but we are a large enterprise. We would prefer to, host the software on our own, hardware versus running it in the cloud. And we said, no problem, we can do it. A third potential customer said, we have a service provider partner who manages our infrastructure. Is it possible for you to partner with them and essentially have them offer the cloud service? Yes, we can do that as well. Our pledge to customers, which is, yes to BYOD or bring your own devices, yes to public apps freely, no to any additional IT burden.
Is there a scaling challenge? Because you've got obviously a lot of devices, a lot of apps, a lot of connections being made in. What are the limits on numbers?
The team we have in place has a ton of experience building carrier-grade solutions, both in terms of the cloud platform and in terms of real-time traffic inspection and management.
What about platform independence? And because with BYOD, there's going to be every platform in the world.
We support all 4 device OSs that are in enterprise use, which is precisely why we had to say, if we are going to be in the policy enforcement business, it has to be leak-proof, lock-proof, which is also why we do it on the device and, more importantly, on the wire.
So that addresses probably the predominant issue I run into when I talk to IT security guys is the executives are bringing these newfangled iPads in, and the first thing they ask is to get access to corporate email on this device that typical security guys have no experience with and aren't comfortable with the fact that, don't worry about it, it's secure, there's no threats. But obviously that's not going to be the case very long.
This is not just about malware. This is really about risk management. This is about making sure that violations don't happen either. And this can be based on, usage policies that you have. This can be about denial of service attacks, which may not be there today, but may happen, down the road. So it really covers the gamut of everything from risk management or risk reduction to threat prevention.
What's the deployment like, or the experience like, for somebody who's rolling out your solution?
Typically, they start off using our cloud services, what I call add water, make soup. Okay. Once they deployed it on, let's say, 100, 200 devices, using it in our cloud, then they decide that they want to deploy it on a larger scale. Again, we are just starting off our deployments,
Sure, yeah.
and that's how it goes. And of course, the customer has the flexibility of either, hosting it on their own or simply continuing with our, 4.9 cloud platform.
And it's all software.
Yes,
So-
one of the things I learned from my McAfee days was to simply make it low touch or no touch.
Right.
And that's really the way we've, architected our platform.
So in the future, when the threats, obviously targeted attacks are going to come in from mobile platforms, somebody will be ready
Sure.
to recognize when it's happening and do something about it.
Absolutely.